Welcome to episode 7 of the Eyes and Ears podcast slash live stream. I am your co-host, Brad. With me, as always, is Ealan Osborne. How you doing,
Hello,
Ealan? How are we today?
greetings, salutations, all.
Yes. Yeah. I didn't practice that intro at all, by the way. I just said it and it happened. Um,
Yeah.
well, hopefully you guys are joining us. You're doing well. We are going to be talking about something that I think is really, I don't know, it could be talked about like to infinity and beyond.
Mhm.
Disney, don't copyright strike us. But it can literally be talked about so much, and that is diminishing returns when it comes to home theater stuff, like home theater gear, speakers, displays, what have you. There's always that point where you get the most performance at a certain price point, and then it just balloons after that. You know, you're buying for aesthetics or a name or whatever. So we're gonna kind of dive into that and talk about it and kind of our thoughts on that, our opinions, like where is the line on certain components and
Mhm.
you know, should you cross that line? Like when is maybe the time to cross that line? We hear a lot about in-game and in-game components and all that stuff, and it's like, is it ever truly in-game? So lots of just kind of fun things to I hate to say this, unpack, but it's really what it is, because there's a lot of stuff here that can be talked about, and we want to hear from you guys too. If you are in the chat, go ahead and say hello. We got Michael here.
Hey, Mikey.
Hey, I always feel left out because he just says yo Ealan, and I'm over here. No, I don't care. Hey, Michael, what's
Nah,
going
he
on,
knows me
man?
now.
Yeah, Joel is here as usual. Thank you, Joel, for joining us. Um, but before we get started, I do want to ask Ealan, what the hell you been up to, man? It's been a couple weeks. Anything new and
Um,
exciting?
I mean, not really. Well, actually, um, my wife and I have been again going back and forth with the in-ceiling speakers. Since I want to put some in-ceiling speakers as my
Mm,
surrounds in the ceiling behind our listening position in the living room.
yeah.
Um, but I was doing some calculations and some geometry, and the angle in which the in-ceiling speakers are pointed at, because they're not the kind that just point straight down, they are angled a little bit
Yeah.
inside of the housing, and they're at well,
Is
the
it
my
just the
contact.
driver? Like, I'm sorry. Is it is the driver angled as well, or is it just like, can the tweeter be aimed
Yes.
freely and the driver has an angle to it as well? Or
No, you can't actually move anything. It is just a
oh,
static.
okay,
It's a
gotcha.
static angle
Hmm.
that's just permanent. The my contact at Golden Ear said that it was at a 30-degree angle,
Okay,
but I think from since
is it
it's
like a little?
ceiling mounted, I think he meant 60 degrees. Like
Mm,
it depends on where you're drawing the line, I guess.
yeah, yeah,
Because honestly, if it's a 30-degree angle from the ceiling, that's shooting like way over my head, you know? If it's like, I don't know, like say it's 10 feet in front of me or 10 feet behind me or
yeah,
something, that's
yeah,
going to be shooting over my head no matter what, if it's 30 degrees. But if it's 60 degrees, then yeah, that's more like it.
yeah.
That's more of what I was hoping for. Um, but but I told her that, and I did some measurements, and I'm like, okay, so with that being said, 60 degrees would be right about here, like basically 10 feet behind us,
Oh,
which is
okay, yeah.
kind of encroaching on the kitchen at that point, since it's an open concept layout. And like the look on her face when she realized how far back they would be, I was like, "Ugh."
It's like you got an uphill battle there. It sounds like,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I, that night I kind of went to bed angry, but just
Son of a.
because, yeah, just because we were going back and forth, and like just another thing that I had to deal with in this
Yeah.
situation. But the next day I kind of ran through some specs in my head, or like just different alternatives. And the thing about having passive soundbar on my mantle where it is currently. You know, if we wanted to get like festive on holidays and stuff, normally we decorate the mantle, especially, you know, Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, those three major holidays. And with the soundbar there, we can't really do that because the soundbar takes up almost the entire mantle.
Right.
So, you know, aesthetically, it kind of just is an eyesore, even though it's very nice and sleek and black, whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I was thinking, okay, what if, I mean, I'm going to sort of create some sort of like rig to where I can at least not like officially put holes in the ceiling, but at least somehow be able to test it out before putting holes in the ceiling. But they,
Right.
you know, Golden Ear sent me 4 in-ceiling speakers originally because I wanted 2 in the back and possibly 2 in the front if I had that soundbar below the TV. But I came to a compromise with my wife and I was like, okay, what if we got rid of the soundbar so then we can decorate the mantle however we want and it's not just some black bar staring at us?
Yeah.
And what if I did 3 in ceilings up in the front and just forget about the rears? Because even right now, because that's how it is right now, it's just a 3.1. I've got the sound bar and then a little subwoofer in the corner. And I mean, we were watching, because honestly, I switched out the Marantz Cinema 70S for the Emotiva MC1 because I wanted to see, you know, is there any differences? Am I getting a better experience with a quote unquote preamp as opposed to an AVR that just so happens to have
Right.
pre-outs? So I did that, and honestly, I liked it. Definitely had a brighter quality to it, especially watching like action movies and stuff.
Yeah.
Glass breaking and things like that would definitely came out a lot more punchier. The bass response was much louder, at least by default, because I didn't really mess with the bass response or the subwoofer level all that much, besides crossover, which I just set it at 80 hertz. But yeah, I had to turn it down a lot compared to what I had it set up as with the Marantz. So whatever Emotiva is doing, they really push that subwoofer or LFE signal just by default or something.
Wow.
So that was cool. It not in a bad way, in a good way.
Yeah.
So that was cool. But I noticed this a little bit when I tested out the MC1, but hooking it up this time around, just because it was getting everyday use, and every single time that we switched from a particular, because we just use our TV apps, our smart TV apps, you know, Hulu and Disney Plus, whatever.
Yeah. This is on the frame,
And
the Samsung frame.
yes,
Okay.
correct. And every time we watched something and went back to the home screen, there was this little pop or like little like staticky ripples. It almost, sometimes it even sounded like somebody like tearing fabric, just little
Interesting.
short little anomalies like that.
Yeah.
But it was every single time that we switched. It's basically
Weird
anytime
feedback or-
HDMI was switching, or when I switched to the Nintendo Switch. And yeah, so that was a little disappointing. So I put the Marantz back in.
There you go.
Long story short, the Marantz is back in. But yeah, previously I didn't have, I can't remember the exact feature, what it's called, but there's some sort of feature in the Marantz Cinema 70S that like enhances surround a little bit, like
Dynamic EQ, maybe?
virtualizes a little bit.
Oh, okay.
So that way, even if you just have ear level speakers, it tries to
Simulate.
virtualize.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Because at first I was like, I don't want that.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
turned it on just this time around just to see, and it made a big difference. It was really cool. It definitely sounded like stuff was going to the side a lot more. Not necessarily like up, but or not necessarily off the ceiling, but definitely higher than the soundbar itself.
Yeah.
So it definitely made a change. And we were watching the first Incredibles movie, the Pixar movie.
It's a great movie.
I mean, Brad Bird, the director, I mean, he really knows how to do action and just story and people coming together and families and those relationships and stuff. So I really love Brad Bird's style
Yeah.
and his just directing in general. But man, those two, both of them, the Incredibles 1 and 2, have incredible sound. Just FYI, if you're wondering which Pixar movies are demo worthy, both Incredibles are demo worthy.
Yeah.
So yeah, it definitely made a difference, and I really like it. So with that being said, I'm going to try and test it out with 3 in-ceiling speakers before actually putting holes in the ceiling. Because I mean, we could get away with just 2 up front.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, you got to have that center so that dialogue has its own little pocket, you know?
Trust me. I know. I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's something that I just recently experienced. Before I kind of talk about what I've been doing, I just
Yeah.
want to say howdy to a few folks here. Jeffrey is here again. Thank you, Jeffrey, for
Hey.
joining us. Craig is here. Hi, guys. Hey, Craig. How are you?
Hi, Craig.
And Kevin is here. Kevin Gardner. Thank you, Kevin, for joining us. Really appreciate it. Evening, gents, he says. How you doing, Kevin, buddy? And we have Mid Devil 1980. Hello again from Lansing, Michigan. Well, hello. Thank you for joining us
Hi.
from the Michigan area. And then we had a comment. I think this is geared towards you, Ealan. Douglas Barrows said, I bought my Yamaha Avantage. I butchered that name. Sorry. RX-A8A plus clips reference Premiere 2.5.2.0 today.
Whoa.
Congratulations. That's a mighty investment. That's awesome. Welcome to the club. Goal is to be 7.2.4 in a few years. Started this whole journey after watching your Costco $1,500 setup years ago. And that right there, ladies and gentlemen, is how I knew that he was talking about Ealan, because I've never made a Costco video before. But that's awesome, man. That is,
Yeah. Congrats, Doug.
you got some nice stuff going on there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's a
man,
good goal, too.
Let me tell you, like that kind of ties into what I've been doing. If anybody here has seen my recent video about doing a revamp of my home theater, I have completed that. I'm working on the video. It's currently like a little under 2 hours now. Might have to split it into, but basically got the center channel out from the entertainment stand up on top of it, and put the display that I have, the LGC one, 77-inch, up on a floor stand. And that was probably the best $100 investment I've ever made in my theater in my life. It's amazing. It's super awesome. I ended up going on Facebook Marketplace and grabbing a couple of Pioneer BS22s to match my side surrounds for a total of 7 main speakers, bed channels. So I'm now 7 channels, 7 channels on the floor and 4 above, and then 4 subwoofers. And yes, that took a good 4 to 5 days, which is why so like over 3 hours of footage of all of that, and a lot of that's time lapse too. So that's a lot, a lot of time spent doing it. And then I spent another. So I think maybe some people in the comments maybe are the ones that asked this. Have I looked at Odyssey 1 from Obsessive Compulsive Audiophile? I actually did the Odyssey 1 calibration a couple times. Very, very awesome.
And that's just using regular Odyssey.
Yes, this is funny. This just came in here 37 seconds ago. before I could even get to it. So I'll answer that right now, Jeffrey. We normally hold general questions till the end, but for you, I'll make it. No. So I will actually be talking about this in the like the revamp video. So I ran it, and it is awesome. It is, if you're looking for a quick way to get the most out of Odyssey, better than what you can get like just from running it like on your receiver or whatever, it's fantastic. My main issue with it is it only corrects, like it has a built-in curtain, so it doesn't do any correction over like I think 300 hertz.
Oh.
And the reason I say that's an issue for me is all of my main speakers are soft dome tweeters, but then my height channels are like titanium tweeters. They're like the Purion Audio Clear 6Cs. They are very, very bright. And even they have a like a dip switch on it that you can reduce the highs. Even with that reduced, the highs end up like after like say three kilohertz, they're 6 to 8 dB hotter than everything else in the system.
Whoa.
So they really call attention to themselves, and some people like that. Me, I ended up doing his Supreme Odyssey calibration, which essentially corrects the entire curve. I told Ealan about this. It corrects the entire curve. You can have your own house curve, which I like. And basically, every single speaker in that system uses, multi-EQ XT32, but you're kind of cheating it. You're not actually using those points. You're using measurements you take in REW, and you're converting them to. It took like 8 hours to follow this.
Yeah.
Took a long time. But I am floored with the results. Every speaker follows the curve pretty precisely. Like,
wow.
There's such like a cohesiveness that I got close with doing his like manual calibration using graphic EQ on my Denon or before, but this is like on a whole other level. It's far more accurate. So I'm thinking about doing a video discussing when to choose Odyssey 1 versus doing like the Supreme Audio calibration, or even the more advanced one, which is like his Odyssey Art, which is kind of even more intense. That may be like my next goal, but honestly, I spent so much time calibrating.
Yeah.
I just kind of want to enjoy the system right now, and then
Yeah,
go down
for sure.
that road later. But Jeffrey did ask, how much did you boost your subs with your latest house curve? My house curve is no longer the way it used to be. Basically, it's basically the entire. It goes over the entire frequency range. So if you've watched my old mini DSP tutorials, where I boost up until like 30 dB, then I slope down. I don't do that anymore. Basically, it taps out at like 77.5 decibels, and then over from basically 10 hertz all the way up to 20,000 hertz. It goes from 77.5 decibels at like 10 hertz to like 70 decibels around there, 71 decibels at 20,000. So there's just a gradual like slope. So really, if you're targeting like 75 dB, they're only 3 decibels higher or hotter, but because you're sloping down at the highs, it does increase the bass a bit more. I don't use dynamic EQ or anything like that, so it really just makes it sound have a far more balanced sound. Damn it. The thumbs up, man. Happened
Gets you
again.
every
It freezes
time.
my screen. Oh. But yeah, I will actually be doing that. I want to read this to you. I've been meaning to go through that too, to do the Atmos speaker EQs. I think there might be some code edit you can make to A1 to extend the frequency. Yes, that was going to be my next. I was actually going to comment on his video and ask him if there was a way to do that, because that's really, honestly, Odyssey 1 took like 0 time compared to the Supreme Odyssey calibration.
Yeah.
Most people, if they're happy with the correction up to 300 hertz, which most people want a curtain anyway, that kind of know what they're like, know about home theater and are really into this, most people are going to be fine with that. It's just like the use cases like me and like Jeffrey that you really need to tame those high frequencies in your Atmos if you want everything to kind of blend together. Because
Yeah.
with the Odyssey One, I noticed like it sounded great, but the Atmos speakers, the height channels are really, really prominent, really
Mm,
prominent in the mix. Again, some people like that. It got to the point where it was like distracting.
yeah.
They were like theoretically they were level matched with all the other speakers, but they were so
Right.
like they were hot on the high end enough that it was like it's too much. Um,
Can you then go back in manually and just kind of turn those high frequencies down a bit?
like with Odyssey One, I'm not sure because basically you're editing the you're kind of hacking Odyssey in a way, so you
Yeah.
can't really make any adjustments to the curve
Mhm.
once you're done, I believe.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, Jeffrey even mentions I don't have as much time before to do these insane cow. Yeah. Oh, 7 month old first baby now. Congratulations, man. That yeah.
Wow.
You
Yeah.
need all the downtime you can get in calibration. While I find it enjoyable, after a certain point, I'm just like, I just want to listen to this stuff, man. I want to enjoy it.
Yeah. I just want to
Um,
watch movies.
exactly. Good to know. He says I'm still running with plus 10 dB to 30 hertz and then to 0 at 100. That's still a great house curve. It just over time it got a little too intense for me.
Mm.
I like more like I don't know if it's like just gotten older, but I kind of like a little more balance to my sound overall.
Yeah.
But I think the nice thing is knowing where that line is, like like if I want to boost, like if I'm listening to music or like maybe watching a concert film like Metallica Through the Never, which is kind of one of my favorite go-tos. Um, I like to boost the bass a little bit, you know,
Yeah.
just because it's music. Like for me, it's like I'm not it's like okay, I need to find a level where like the kick drum's really like punchy, but
Mm.
it's not like overbearing on the whole thing. So yeah, I will be talking about that in the next video, and then I will also be doing a video kind of comparing Odyssey One and the Supreme Odyssey calibration, just talking about it because like this having that kind of access for free to
Yeah.
do this stuff without even needing to buy multi EQX or anything. This is just using the $20 editor app.
Right.
That's awesome. This is super awesome.
Man, that is cool.
All right. Well, I think we've got the pleasantries out of the way, right? Dive
Actually,
into the
one more thing.
yes,
I just want to give a shout out to all of our podcast listeners in Denmark.
yes. That's
For
crazy to
whatever
me.
reason, I mean, obviously, United States is number one when it comes to the percentage of people who are downloading our podcast, but Denmark is a close second. So, cheers to all you in Denmark downloading our
Right?
podcast.
That's
We
amazing.
appreciate you. And sorry, I don't know any Danish
I,
phrases or anything.
I don't either.
So,
I don't
yay.
either.
Hooray for Denmark. You guys are
Yay.
cool.
All right. So thank you again, Denmark, for your support and for listening. Thank you so much.
Yay.
So before we dive into this whole diminishing returns thing, let me get this stuff out of the way here. So you got a topical question as usual, put a TQ, then ask about the current topic so we can see it. Opinions are always welcome, even if they're wrong. Kidding. They're not welcome at all. I'm kidding. You guys can, we want to hear from you in the comments. The whole point of this, doing this live instead of like pre-recording it and then releasing it in a podcast form is so we can interact with you. And we're both like on YouTube anyway. So why not? Right. Yeah. And then if you have a general question, put a GQ in there, just like the magazine, and ask away. We typically try to get those done near the end of the broadcast. But if we have some downtime, someone needs to run to the bathroom or something, we might just say, hey, we'll answer a few GQs. And then
Yeah, boy.
finally, super chats and super stickers. These are not required, but they do show your support for us and are highly recommended by myself and Ealan.
Yeah.
They, but don't feel like the only way to get your question answered is by throwing a super chat or super sticker in there. We will answer as many questions as we possibly can. But this will get your question or whatever to the forefront, and it just shows your support for us. So thank you so much. And if anyone watches this, excuse me, at a later point and you're the guy that gave me a $50 super thanks on one of my mini DSP videos.
Whoa.
You're awesome. Thank you so much.
Wow.
Yeah, that was nice to wake up to the other morning. So thank you. If you're watching this in the future or now, appreciate it so much. You guys are all. I thanked the person already, but thanks again for the $50. That just made my morning. So anyway, diminishing return, the law of diminishing returns. What does that even mean? Well, Ealan, I'm going to let you.
You got a bell curve.
You got to yes. You
got
get
a
to a
bell
point
curve.
with anything really, cars, musical instruments, basically anything in life, right? You're going to get to a point where you run into kind of the max potential at a certain price point or a certain product, whatever. And then once you go over that, it's just kind of extra bells and whistles, essentially, right? You're with speakers, you're paying for aesthetics. You might be paying for, I don't know, some crazy like materials that go into the speaker cone or tweeter or whatnot. Like I was saying to Ealan before, though, a $5,000 speaker versus a $25,000 to $30,000 speaker, are you getting $20,000 to $25,000 to $30,000 improvement? My math ain't mathing right now, but it's a $20,000 to $25,000 improvement. Probably not.
No.
And so typically what happens is, and we've heard it time and time again, right? People will have a system that they don't think sounds the best that it can, right? And so what do? First and foremost, well, maybe I need a new receiver. This has better room correction on it. Okay, well, that only gets you so far, right? Room correction can't fix like the worst sounding room in the world. So you go, okay, well, that didn't really fix it. Maybe I just need new speakers. So you buy like really expensive speakers, and guess what? It sounds a little bit better, but you're still not addressing the main problem. You're putting band-aids on the main issue, right? Which is your room. Your room is basically what's going to affect how everything sounds. Low frequencies, high frequencies, mids, it all plays into that. You got all hardwood floors and you know, your kitchen's off to the side, it's all open. Yeah, you're going to have like a kind of an echo chamber pretty much, right?
Yeah.
Like it's going to sound like a concert hall no matter what you do. Conversely, if you actually instead took that money that you spent on the Denon and Marantz and stuff and bought acoustic treatments or paid someone to kind of like look at your room and go, you should place this here, place that here, or, you know, look at proper speaker positioning, things like that. That will actually go much further than just like throwing money at a problem and trying to fix it. So with that said, though, it does come down to diminishing returns, really. How much money do you need to spend on something, right? And Ealan, I know you have experience with this. I definitely have experience with it.
Well, first and foremost, I want to get this off my chest.
Get it.
Just because of some comments I've received in the past on particular videos. Having done this channel for almost 4 years now, I have drawn a line, and in my mind, I consider anything, whether that be a receiver, speaker, whatever, anything under $1,000 is budget to me. Just because now I've seen the whole spectrum,
Right.
having done this channel and seen all the other stuff that's out there, because my goodness, there's so many speaker brands out there. There's
Yeah. Oh, there's a ton,
so many
man.
AVRs to choose from, preamps, etc. So going forward, just know that in my mind, anything $1,000 or less is budget. Because I remember just the other day, it was maybe last week, it was fairly recent. My first ever product review on my channel was the Klipsch 5.1 home theater pack. And, you know, that was September of 2020 when I released that. And somebody commented, because that particular system, I don't even think they sell it anymore.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's been taken over by the 5.1.4 cinema reference theater pack or whatever. So yeah, that's a bygone era. But at the time, I think it was being sold for like $450 at Costco, and then sometimes it goes on sale for $350. But you could even get it on Amazon for like $298 at certain times of the year. So
Right.
this is like this is 5 speakers. This is the center channel, front, left, and right, and rear surrounds, and a subwoofer.
Wow.
All for, potentially under $300. That is what I consider like micro budget,
Yeah.
because you're getting 5 speakers and a subwoofer for under $300. That's for people like me back in the day that just needed something and didn't want to spend an arm and a leg. And somebody
Yeah.
commented, "Ha, budget," he says. And I'm like, are you kidding me? What more do you want for $300?
Yeah.
You're getting
Like that,
so
yeah.
much for $300 already. I mean, you could get a $300 speaker just by itself.
Or
But
just spend $300 on a receiver alone.
yeah,
Like that's
exactly.
it. And like you, I bought a Kenwood home theater in a box back in like, I want to say like I was in high school. This is
Yeah.
back in the just the Dolby Digital DTS days, no True HD, none of that. DVDs were insanely popular. They were becoming more and more popular. I paid $500 or $600, and then the Toslink cable was another $50 or something, whatever. I was young, naive, stupid. I bought everything from Circuit City. What's funny, I still actually have the stands that I bought from Circuit City, and they're completely fine. They're ugly as hell, but they're completely fine.
Yeah.
But that just goes to show you though that it's always perspective, right? Of someone who describes budget as one thing. They may not have that same perspective, which is fine. But it's like we do need to kind of draw the line or say the line is here. I think I think it was my PB 1000 Pro review, I called it SVS. I said this exactly verbatim. I remember SVS's entry level subwoofer. For all intents
it
and
is.
purposes, it is their kind of entry point. It's either that or the SB 1000 Pro. I think it's slightly less for that one, but it's
Yeah.
still it's their entry level subwoofer. And someone kind of dogged me in the comments for calling it entry level, and I said, "Well, I said it's SVS's entry level. I could say the same thing about whatever like other speaker made, like Paradigm's entry level is this, or Martin Logan's entry level is that, or like basically I wasn't calling it entry level. I was calling it, this is what it takes to get into the entry level SVS stuff, not just entry level in general. And as someone who literally has entry level speakers, I consider them entry level, which are the Pioneer Andrew Jones speakers, the second iteration, not the first one with the metal grills, but the second one with the removable ones. Those are cheap when I bought them. The center channel was $90. The front towers were $170 each. The bookshelves were $99 a pair. Like
Wow. Yeah.
those are to me, like at the time I couldn't afford anything else, and I haven't replaced them yet because I'm being very picky about what I replace them with. It's like I want to choose the right thing. And so like those are what I would consider entry level, but I'm sure someone will come along and be like, well, they're cheaper speakers. Yeah, absolutely. But like price to performance, those are actually rated pretty highly. They're not the greatest speakers, but at that price point, they kind of punch well above their weight. In my opinion, there are a ton of better things out there, obviously. But am I like, I paid like, okay, $90 for the center, right? We're talking about diminishing returns. The performance I've gotten out of that $90 center is crazy.
Yeah.
So looking at a $500-$600 center, am I getting $500 or $600 more performance out of it? Like that's kind of what has been difficult about upgrading those speakers. Now, you and I were in kind of a different position than most consumers in that, like, if we get something for review, sometimes companies just like say, hey, make a couple videos on it and it's yours. Or other times we can buy it at a pretty substantial discount. So that kind of eases the pain
Yeah.
of upgrading, right? But at the same time, it's like I'm not throwing money away because I don't have a ton of disposable income, you know? I don't think you have kids, so
You
like
don't?
no. I think most people also that watch our channels think that we do, and it's like all this stuff is like held together by pencils and like scotch tape. Like it's like what you don't see behind the camera is something else. But it's like that whole like, am I gonna get like so much more enjoyment out of something that costs a few $1,000s more? Maybe. I
Yeah.
definitely like want to get more efficient speakers because these are, like kind of not very sensitive, kind of hard to drive a little bit.
Mhm.
But it's also something where I'm like, these might sound better with an amp, like a separate amp instead of,
Yeah.
because they're not as sensitive. So I kind of like having them around. I mean, honestly, that's why I haven't upgraded. They sound great for what they are.
Mhm.
And that kind of does get into the whole diminishing returns. They are purely entry level, but I don't know. Someone mowing a lawn outside.
Yeah.
Hey, Joel actually was in the same boat as me right now. Look at that. He took a couple years looking for the speaker that would replace my AJ Pioneers that would fit my budget. Yeah, man. Joel, if you don't mind answering, did you have the original series, or did you have like the updated series, like the FS52s or the BS22s or CS22s? Um, because the originals, I still have a couple of those, and they perform so poorly by comparison. I was going to use them as my back surrounds, and that's what led me to Facebook Marketplace to grab a pair of BS22s for $40 locally. Um, yeah, man, those old ones are just. Yeah, I could see why they had trouble selling second the second ones because the first ones were so bad. Like they were
Had
awful.
you had you listened to him recently?
No, they've honestly just been sitting out in our Florida room, collecting
Yeah.
dust out there. I have the center channel. Um, oh, he said. Oh, he had to stop mowing my lawn. Ah, that's hilarious. Michael, I did not know they had a third gen. What? I'll have to look that
Oh.
up. It's for the 53s or the 23s or something. I'm gonna have to look that up because that's not that honestly I don't know why. I wouldn't like I know the 22s no longer like they're discontinued. The
Mhm.
23s or whatever, like the third gen might be discontinued as well. But
Hmm.
oh, wrong one. Kevin actually says my system is low budget entry level. I found gear in recycle center and fixed it. Very lucky to have had gear given to me and bought
Wow.
some stuff as returns or scratch and dent. Very grateful. Yeah, man. The used market, or if you can find something, that can be like a gold mine. Like if you just have a friend who's
Yeah.
like, hey, I don't really want these. You want them? If you can get something for cheap, um, then yeah, that's dude, that's super awesome. I'm a big fan
Mhm.
of like used gear as long as you test it before you buy it and kind of know what you're getting into. Um,
Yeah, man. It's like, um, oh man, I had a thought and then it decided to leave my brain.
Getting older, man. That's what it is. I think I'm older than you, so I don't think that
No,
I don't know.
I think you're a couple years younger than I am.
I'm 47.
No, you're
I'm not
not.
47. I'm not 47. No, yeah, I think having while you're trying to get that thought back in your
Oh, okay. It came back.
go go.
Um, I think, yeah, if used markets, I think speakers are one of the best things you can invest in a used market, just because speakers are they're so simple. It's a positive and a negative electrical signal, and that's about it. I mean,
Yeah.
unless it's somebody who's just been playing extra loud music for hours and hours and hours, yeah, sure, maybe they've blown out some things.
Yeah.
But if, you could probably find a YouTube channel or a YouTube video out there on how to repair broken speakers if you have a particular issue. But I mean, I get how like AVRs probably not so much are great in the used market.
Yeah.
Just because you don't, like somebody driving a car, you don't know how they
Har-
drove the car,
Right. Right.
what their driving habits are.
Yeah.
So it's kind of the same thing with an AVR. How often did they play music through it? How often did they watch movies?
Yeah.
How loud did they make it get? Um, how cold or hot, or is it climatized where they are? Um, yeah.
I
So
mean,
those.
yeah.
Because just the components inside, there's so many components inside of an
Yeah.
AVR that it's just going to fail eventually.
Yeah.
Whereas speakers, I mean, that's why vintage speakers are such a big thing because
Yeah.
they can last for decades.
Yep. You might have to, I think my friend Michael, youth man, had to replace the crossovers in his uh Klipsch Scalas at some point,
Yeah.
because they literally, like, they died, like one something just died. But I mean,
Mhm.
they're from like, what was the 70s, 80s, something like that. It was, I mean, yeah, I have speakers still. Like, I have some old Klipsch. I don't even remember what they are. Honestly, they're not like heresies or anything like that. They're just kind of like, I literally was working at a self storage place. Some guy moved his stuff out of, like, closed the storage unit, and he left two speakers in there. And I called him, and I was like, "Hey, like, you just left these clips in here. Do you want them?" And he's like, "Nope, they are all yours if you want them." Because we were talking about like audio and stuff.
Yeah.
I was like, "Oh, thanks, man." And I like had to like get it approved by the, because we're not supposed to take stuff. Like, we're just supposed to toss it. I was like, "I'm not tossing these clip speakers, you know?" Like,
Oh,
they
dude.
had some slight water damage on them, but they're massive. They're like this big, you know? So like, they've been my workout speakers for ages, ever since like 2014, basically. And they
Wow.
still work, man. They still work.
Dang. Yeah.
They're not the most visually appealing speakers, because of the water damage and stuff, but
Yeah.
yeah. Like, Kevin actually mentioned something that I thought was interesting. He said he found my 70-inch Sharp Aquos TV in the recycle center, fixed it 7 years ago. Happy. Um,
Wow.
yeah, that is. I would kind of classify displays like TVs in the same ballpark as like AVRs in terms of like the used market, because you, especially like if you're
Yeah.
dealing with OLEDs and stuff, you never know how someone you abuse those.
Mhm.
Um, it not that, like, especially, I'm mainly talking about anything before like this, like the LG CX series OLEDs,
Yeah.
like C9, C8s, things like that, that are notorious for kind of like, they hadn't quite figured out the whole image retention burn-in thing so much, where
Mhm.
those are more like prevalent on those models, over time. Like, I think one
Yeah.
has like it's like an orange blob that can show up on one of them. It's weird. I think the
Yeah.
C8 or something. But yeah, that's really hard. Like, even like projectors and stuff. Like, you never know if someone just threw in a cheap bulb off of Amazon, right?
Mhm.
You can get them for $100, but like, they're not going to be the same as the OEM bulb. So all that stuff's like really, you got to know what to look for there. Um, you can still
Yeah.
find great deals. You just have to have a more kind of keen eye on that stuff.
Well,
Um,
plus, I mean, kind of going along with this from Kevin Gardner, AVRs are like cell phones. Tech changes yearly, but starting with older gear is a great place to start learning the hobby.
Absolutely.
But I mean, that's kind of the same thing with TVs nowadays too.
Yeah.
Because, TVs used to just be TVs and like, hey, it's a picture. But just like cell phones and just like anything electronics, nowadays it has technology that's, going to become obsolete just in a few years, or
Yeah.
AI technology, or better upscaling technology,
Hmm.
etc. So now it just seems like everything revolving around consumer electronics in general is just made to last for a few years,
Yeah. Yeah.
because they understand, the manufacturers understand that it's technology is moving so quickly that they can just hopefully try and get some people to buy this particular
This now,
TV.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, and even with LG, like, what do you think about the fact that LG is coming out, or all TV manufacturers are coming out with something every year? Just like, I don't know, it's like Apple popularized this idea of
Yearly
stuff
cycle
having to
of,
come out every
yeah,
year. Yeah. It's like, you just don't.
yeah.
Just
I
kind of
think,
hold off, make some improvements. Maybe like a new iPhone comes out every 3 to 5 years, and it just blows all of our collective minds when a new one comes out, because now it's just like, last year's model is just a tiny bit not as good as this year's
yeah.
model. It just
Well,
doesn't make
yeah,
sense.
yeah. I mean, with like LG stuff, it really, I mean, if I'm being honest, if we're looking at like going from like the CX to the C1 to the C2 to the C3,
Mhm.
there are more or less iterative. I would consider them iterative upgrades in terms of like HDR performance. You're not gaining really enough to, like, I bought my C1 when the C2 came out because I
Mhm.
was able to get a killer deal on the C1.
Yeah.
The C2 at the time was, I don't know, $500-$600 more for really not much else. It had a gaming feature that I don't really use, but um I got to like I lost my train of thought there for a second. Sorry, just like you earlier, brain fog.
Yay.
Um, no, old like basically the in the 4K 120 mode in the like the C2 onward, they got rid of black frame insertion, so you can no longer like use that feature, which is can be useful for gaming because it kind of emulates the way like CRT motion is. At 4K
Mm.
120, you can also do 4K 60. I don't really use it, but I don't like not having the feature for like when I want to use it. So
Yeah.
for something like that's really easy to run, perfect example, you made a video on it recently, Planet of Lana. I can do 4K 120 on my PC with that, no problem. I can use
Yeah.
black frame insertion, and it looks very, very like the motion on that game. It looks like super great. I mean,
Mhm.
LG motion, like once you get past 60, already looks amazing anyway.
Right.
Over like LCD. But yeah, I just didn't want to be locked out of that. Whereas like the G series, those seem to get the most improvement, right? So like the G1, I was looking at that hardcore, but I like at the time I needed a stand. I needed something with a stand. I didn't want to have to buy a third party, whatever. I almost bought one on Green Toe, and I was like, I had it in my cart. I was about to buy it, and I was like, I can't do it. But like, the HDR performance on that is substantial. Well, I don't want to say substantially, but it's gotten substantially better each display, like each iteration. And I think the G4s are looking to be like 150% brighter
Mm.
than like the G3s, I think. Um, but honestly, if you consider those high end, I don't know, that might be like, other than like the theater seats that I have in my system, which were given to me, I didn't pay for those.
Mhm.
That's like the highest end component in my system that I paid for, like paid full price for. I didn't get it at a discount or anything other than it being on sale because the C2s were coming out. So
Mhm.
um, it's basically like, I knew that like I wanted an OLED, and I'd never had an OLED prior to that. Coming off the Vizio P Series Quantum X, which was a hot steaming pile of garbage. After they updated the firmware and borked it and took like a year and a half to completely fix it. And I still don't think it's completely fixed, but I sold that at a loss and paid like put like $500 with that and got a 77 inch. And dude, I love
Mhm.
like at the time, like the pic, like when it worked, the picture quality on the Vizio was great. Like it was, for the price, it was amazing at an 85-inch screen, nice inky blacks. But that set was just plagued with so many issues that I couldn't. And the gaming stuff was like an HDMI 2.1 never really worked properly. So
Dang
yeah.
it.
Anyway, yeah, and so like that, you know, I'd always been a fan of like that price to performance. They seemed to be kind of on an uphill trajectory, Vizio, and then all of a sudden it was just like, well, you just shit the bed, man. Like, what the heck? Like, why? Like, why did you do this? And then they like, we don't see anything wrong. So it was really hard to get any type of answers from their support, and it sucked, man. Um, but
So where do you well, let's talk about AVRs.
Sure.
Where do you consider the apex before
the
returns start to diminish?
I mean, I think this would probably be most people's answer, and that would be like, as kind of a get the most bang for the buck type of thing. Probably the Denon X3800H. That has
Yeah.
scalability. If you add like separate amplification, you can get more. I think you can get more channels. I can't remember, but it kind of has
Yes.
everything that you would want out of a modern AVR without, like, I don't even remember how much it is, but it's definitely not cheap. But in terms of like what you get, like you could step up to like the 4800 for I don't know how much more. You might get, you know, higher quality components built in. But I think at that point you might consider going to like Marantz, you know, get
Yeah,
like the really
exactly.
high end stuff or like the really kind of. But see, like to me, like you're kind of run into those diminishing returns, especially if you're considering external amplification or separate amplification.
Yeah.
You know, the 3800H will get you by for a while, and then you could experiment with that stuff, kind of like, you know, I'm a
Yeah.
like obviously I'm a firm believer of buying like used AVRs when it's when you know the person. You know, I bought my AVR the 6300H for 500 bucks. It's like 5 years old, but it's amazing. Like it does everything that I need it to do other than HDMI 2.1, which is a non-issue now because of the eARC extractor. So it's like I don't really not really looking at the 3800H. Everyone talks about Dirac, and I don't look at room correction anymore as like that is like the de facto of like I need to get that because it has Dirac. I don't like there are ways around things now that I've discovered, you know. It's like if you don't mind doing a little legwork, you don't need Dirac. Like that's just more like an extra bonus, you know. Plus, I think most of the time you got to pay an extra $200 license
Yes.
fee anyway.
Well, Dirac is good for those who don't necessarily want to put 8 hours like you did into
Well, precisely.
yeah, because they
Yeah.
just want to have
Not
a really good, you know, set it up, go through all the steps, you know, hold my hand, Dirac,
yes. Yeah.
and then the result is amazing. So
Yeah.
I get it. I get it how people will lean towards that
Yeah.
because it's one of the best automatic, or at least, you know, it'll take you along the way, and almost anybody could get by doing it because it takes you step by step.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of, you know-how that you have to have beforehand. You don't have to do a lot of homework
Right.
or
Right.
study up on, you know, room correction or frequencies or
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. It's just put the microphone here. Now
Yep.
move it over here. Now move it over here.
Yeah.
All right, let's do subwoofers. So
Yeah.
I get it.
What I'll say to that is I do consider like Dirac, and even Marv mentioned he bought multi EQX, which I hope to check out soon. I haven't heard back from my contact yet about that.
Mm.
But they've said they've secured me a copy and a calibrated microphone. So crossing my fingers. But I still consider those like kind of like there. So like there's like the main built-in Odyssey that I think most people are gonna run that aren't really maybe as deep into the hobby as we are, because we are, like, most of us here are enthusiasts, right? Like we're the ones spending $20 on the editor app, or $200 on EQX, or Dirac, or whatever. So even like, I'd say like the logical step up is do the $20 multi EQ app if you kind of want to get your feet a little more wet. But if you really want to dive in, Dirac or multi EQX are definitely, in my opinion, like more fully featured. You have more options, but it's not for like the faint of art most of the time. Like if you're someone who just wants to run room correction and be done with it with minimal fuss, you're probably going to use the built-in stuff, which unfortunately most of the time isn't going to get you great results, right? Like everybody, I think that's like a general consensus. I'm not drunk, guys, I swear. But then there's also, don't forget, there's Anthem. Like there's Arc Genesis,
Yeah.
which I've heard nothing but amazing things about.
Right.
I've heard, as far as room correction goes, it's kind of like the pinnacle right now of like ease of use and like intrusiveness. Like you don't have to go it, like with Odyssey. I mean, Ealan, you've run Odyssey before. You know, you have to go in and fix the things that
Yeah.
my speaker, they may go down to 40 hertz, but I don't want them playing down to 40 hertz, like I want the subs picking up that slack, because like I'm trying to, they're just not as efficient. So Odyssey still does some weird, strange things depending on the room. And so you kind of have to go in there and tweak. Dirac, less so. I found that you really don't have to do that. You set up a nice
Yeah.
curve in Dirac and you're pretty much good to go. But I do feel like, depending on the version you have, that's the other thing. Dirac has like the main version, and then you could add like something else, like Dirac bass control or whatever. And it's
Yeah.
like, there's like
And then there's multi bass or multi subwoofer Dirac as well. So
yeah. And it like makes it less consumer friendly, because it's like, why the hell? Like, I thought I got the whole full featured one. I just bought the what? Now I have to buy this, and it just makes it so it's like it's more difficult for the end consumer to just get up and running. It's like, oh my gosh. And then there's guys like me who's like, I want all manual control. It's like, I don't mind spending that 8 hours doing something, but that is certainly not for everyone. I'm not saying that it is. It's like, yeah, I'm really like, I can't wait to check out multi QX. I keep wanting to say multi EQX, and it's I feel like the name there is a little misleading, like a little hard to say there, but I do like it. I don't like, the only thing I don't like about that, on paper at least, is you can't use like a U mic with it. You have to use like either the mic that comes with your AVR, or you have to buy, or you can buy, you don't have to. You can buy like an Odyssey calibrated microphone for like $80.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, it all goes through the AVR. I'm curious. Honestly, believe it or not, this is gonna be a surprise to most people. You can use the little Odyssey Eiffel Tower microphone if you don't have a U mic. Obsessive Compulsive Audiophile has a video on how to get the calibration file for that mic that you have. And within, like, it may be a dB or two off from like what you might get with a $120 microphone. But if you want to like just have something to measure your speakers with, you can actually use that mic with REW. Plug it into your computer. It surprised me that you could do that. So for people that don't have access to that, it's a cool thing. But sure, I don't know what I'm saying now. I just went, no, but yeah.
What do you think about, because somebody mentioned this is actually quite a bit up here. I should have started.
Sorry, I talk too much.
I mean, honestly, I think a lot of these people are just having a conversation amongst themselves.
Yeah.
Which is great.
Yes.
More power to you.
I will
people.
say, Michael, real quick, while you look for that, Michael says, Joel, everyone seems to like the Odyssey one. I'm going to wait for Magic Beans. So, Michael, what I'll say, I mentioned this earlier. I think you were here, maybe not. Odyssey one is awesome. It's super, like, if you already have an Odyssey calibration, like a EQ file on your phone or your iPad, and you know how to transfer it to your computer and back, I think, am I thinking of the right one? I think so, yeah. I'm getting confused because I did the Supreme Odyssey calibration. Like I
Like at
think
the
like
same
with
time, yeah.
yeah, because like the Odyssey one is just like a HTML script. With like the Supreme audio calibration, you have to go in and edit uh the ADY file in a JSON editor, like a
Whoa.
JSON, and you can go in
Yeah.
there and do all sorts of things. It's yeah, it's cool. But yeah, Odyssey one, if you already have that Odyssey file, it literally is a few clicks and like you're done. It worked so well outside of not correcting anything above 300 hertz. That's
Hmm.
the biggest gotcha. So sorry, go
Right.
ahead.
Okay. Just simple comment. AV10, the Marantz
Is that
AV10.
a robot?
Bleep blop blurp Marantz. Um, so yeah, that's their flagship preamp. That's $7,000. But I mean, it literally has everything. It's a 15.4 channel preamp, but obviously because it's a preamp, you have to have it. You have to have all of your speakers powered by external amps. But I mean, it's got RO3D. You can, obviously Dolby Atmos and DTSX, IMAX enhanced. Just the fact that you can have up to a 15.4 configuration is bananas. It's got, Marantz's HDAM. Oh wait, no, it doesn't because it's a preamp. Sorry, never mind.
How dare you?
But but uh, but yeah, I mean it pretty much has every bell and whistle you could think of. But would you pay $7,000
Hell no.
for something like that?
I probably no. I mean, the diminishing return there is real. Like it
Mhm.
what's it gonna do for 7 grand that like something for like okay, say I don't need the extra channels, right? That's like a big thing. It's like why am I paying for this with something I'll never use?
Mhm.
I like it's really hard as like, I mentioned this in a video. It's like growing up like poor, like not having a lot of money, still not having a lot of disposable income, but like enough to like be able to like live comfortably and buy stuff that, we want, that we need. It's a lot like I look at like I've been fortunate enough to tour some really high end home theaters, that $1 million Star Wars theater, right? There's another theater like in Palm Harbor. Palm Harbor was it? I think recently it was like another like $1 million home theater basically, and
Mhm.
all these guys have like Wisdom audio systems with like their speakers are like I don't remember, it's like something like 15 grand a piece, like and honestly, did I hear $15,000 speakers? Yes, I did. Did I feel like I was hearing $15,000 per speaker? No, not at all. Sounded fine. Um,
So
not to
what
not
would $15,000 sound to you?
not that. It would really have to like blow my socks off. And you know what? Maybe part of it is me and my hearing loss. I don't know, but
Mhm.
like it's really hard for me to go from like listening to like my speakers to like that and go like that's totally worth 15 grand. I can't like even for like a whole system. Like one speaker is like the price of my entire home theater, pretty much.
Mhm.
Like it's crazy, and I'm like, oh, like they only had like one of the theaters. They only had like 2 subs in. I'm like, really? You spent all this money and you only get 2 subs, and like the ports were chuffing, and I was like, this can't be. Like, are you guys serious? But I was like, no way. So yeah, I don't. I honestly don't know that I can answer what $15,000 speakers would sound like, but I really feel like even if I had bukudos of money and like money was no issue,
Mhm.
I honestly don't know that I would spend 15 grand on a pair of speaker or on a single speaker. You know, I don't even like maybe five per speaker is kind of like my max. Cause I've always been more about like the setup and everything too. Like
Yeah.
I feel like after you, like diminishing returns, right? After that point, you do get into aesthetics, you know,
Yes.
more you get into material quality, like, you know, so if that's important to you and you're like, I want longevity, it's like, okay, well, then maybe you consider this. But, you
Mhm.
know, going to these trade shows like Florida Audio Expo, which is predominantly like a 2 channel
Yeah.
trade show, very cool to see all this stuff. But when I'm listening to a pair of $17,000 speakers, I'm like, wow, they sound good. I'm never gonna have these in my house. You know, like I would never think, you know what, I got 17 grand laying around. I want a pair of these. That's not for me. And that's not to rag on anybody that likes that stuff, but it's just it really for me it's hard to justify that. Cause like as much of an audiophile that I am, I'm also not a 2 channel guy at all. I don't sit and listen to records or vinyl or any. Not again, vinyl is super cool. I love vinyl.
Yeah.
Xavier, the guy I met recently with Gene De La Sala when I did the Maximum AV shoot. I also met him at Florida Audio Expo. He's like, they call him Captain Analog because he like literally sets up and calibrates turntables like Michelle, like high end
Wow.
turntables that I mean, it is literally an art and it like completely fascinates me. So I need to he actually reached out to me and invited me over to like check out some of his stuff and I'm
Oh, cool.
yeah, I think it'd be cool because it's like something I'm not really familiar with,
Yeah.
but I need to kind of keep my distance because I'm like, I already have too many expensive hobbies. And if I start to get into turntables or something and 2 channel, but yeah, I'm just not a 2 channel guy. So it's like spending all this money, man. It's like,
Mhm.
why am I going to spend like there were cables at Florida Audio Expo that are like 30 or $40,000 and it's like
So dumb.
someone mentioned the placebo um
Yeah.
like it is very real. I can't I'm just trying to find the I think it was Michael. Yeah, I'm pretty new to this place. Placebo is crazy real. And I always share, I think I've shared this story before. I had a friend who bought a Kaleidoscape system, kind of new to Kaleidoscape, which is like, again, the entry point cost is like the price of my entire home theater. It's completely, for someone like
Yeah.
me, completely like out of my price range and will be probably for, unless they do something and try to compete. Like if Apple ever comes out with like a way to download high res files onto a hard drive or something,
Mhm.
Kaleidoscape's got to have to do something to compete with that because Apple's the one area that can like. I feel like if they did that, they would change the whole industry. They
Yeah.
really have that kind of power.
Yes.
Um, but no, so like he gets a Kaleidoscape and we're talking, you know, and he's like, "Oh yeah, the movies just all look better," and I was like, "All right." I mean, he's not a video file, he's not an audio file, but
Mhm.
I was like, "Okay, that's definitely like a little placebo because like a bit rate will only do so much. It's not gonna like visually change much of the makeup of a movie, right? Unless the
Mhm.
encode on the 4K Blu-ray is already really bad or something. It'd
Mhm.
be different if it was like, oh, we got this like shitty Terminator 2 master on Blu-ray or 4K Blu-ray, but they did a complete like 30 like new like film scan for Kaleidoscape. All right, then I would
Sure.
understand that, but that's not what we're seeing here. We're just basically mainly seeing like an increase in overall bit rate most of the time, and sometimes not really a lot or any at all. But he's like, yeah, the picture looks better, but he's like, man, I got to tell you, the audio is like a million times better than what's on the disc. All right, right there, my red flag, my BS meter was going off because I was like,
Yeah.
again, unless they're doing remixes, they're getting the same. Because he was like, he kept going back to saying, oh, it's lossless. It's lossless. And I'm like, it's uncompressed. No, he said it's uncompressed. And I'm like, okay, but lossless once unzipped is uncompressed. Like
Mhm.
like Dolby Atmos on the disc, uncompressed. Like once you feed it through, it's the same signal. I was like, you're not getting, because there is no such thing as like uncompressed Atmos, right? There's no like linear PCM Atmos. It's all like, you know, Dolby Atmos got to be decoded by the receiver. That's how it works.
Yeah.
And I would call bullshit on that because I was like, yeah, dude, there's no way. Like
Yeah.
they're probably, I was like, I doubt that they're getting a separate mix unless they're getting the theatrical mix from the mezzanine file from these studios,
Yeah. I feel it's
and
like
then
the
they're
master or
yeah,
something.
and then they're doing their own like kind of full or like encoding to Dolby Atmos, but I don't think they are. I think they're literally
Yeah.
they're getting the mezzanine video file, but they get the same like loss like the Dolby Atmos track that the Blu-ray or whatever would get.
I mean, I would in a heartbeat invest in Kaleidoscape if I knew that they were receiving like actual master files from the post-production facilities, both video and audio. If that was the case, I'd be like, whoa, that's cool. I mean, I can kind of see how video might be improved because a lot of the video files or just the downloadable file alone that you get from Kaleidoscape is twice or three times as big as what it is on the
Yeah.
4K Blu-ray disc. So I can get, you know, maybe having that extra information presents itself on your screen as well. But obviously I haven't seen it in person, so I can't attest to that. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't believe Kaleidoscape has some like relationship with all these, you know, film studios and post-production
Yeah.
facilities where they're
Yeah.
getting some secret version that you can only get on Kaleidoscape and nowhere else. I don't believe that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And Jed actually mentioned something. He's like probably more of a difference between Blu-ray and streaming than Blu-ray and Kaleidoscape. And you're 100% correct because what I noticed like when Kaleidoscape first came out, they were big into kind of not big into, but they were more comparing themselves to we have better quality than what's on the disc, right?
mhm.
But they quickly pivoted that to we have better quality than what's on streaming, right? You
Yeah.
want the best, you're gonna like you want Kaleidoscape when it comes to like streaming. And honestly, it's not streaming. You're downloading this file to a hard drive and playing it back. So it's not streaming, but I get where they're coming from. And I think they had to pivot that because they were getting so much like kind of backlash from like, well, okay, why is it so much more expensive than just buying a 4K player and then buying the disc? Like I'm
Mhm.
not getting like what am I getting? Literally, if we're talking about diminishing returns, if there's an improvement over the disc, it's in like maybe the maximum maybe 5% on the visuals. Audio wise,
Mhm.
probably zero. Like
Yep.
you're getting
Yep.
maybe I would say 0 to 5%. It's probably closer to like maybe 1 to 2%, uh, if that, like less compression artifacts, right? Because of the higher bit rate. Other than that, I guarantee you in motion, you'd be like it'd be really hard to spot the difference between the two.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, it
I
just
think
seems like, you know, if you're going to charge a premium on convenience alone, why are you charging that much more?
right.
Because I mean that's really all it comes down to is convenience.
Yeah.
Instead of having to get up, put a disc in a drive, then go back down and sit down, and then press play, whatever. I get it how you can have this entire library at your fingertips,
Yeah.
choose what you want, download it, and have it on your,
Server, whatever. Yeah.
multi-terabyte server. Yeah.
Yeah.
I get it. It's basically marrying the convenience of streaming with the performance and quality of uncompressed and lossless, etc. So I
Yeah.
get that. But how do you justify charging that much more just for the convenience factor? It really doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah. And yes, Chana is in the house. Techno Dad, yes, we
Hey.
are talking about Kaleidoscape and diminishing returns. That's the whole point of this like podcast live stream thing.
Yeah.
Justin actually mentions something too. If you don't mind the work, a disc ripped into a NAS would be so much cheaper. I assume the quality would be the same too. No, yeah, as long as you're ripping them into like an MKV where there's no additional compression, like you're just ripping the movie,
Yeah.
an audio track, and maybe some subtitles. It's going to be bit for bit identical to what's on the disc. You're just changing the container.
Yeah.
But I like how he opened it though. He's like, if you don't mind the work, because it is work.
It is.
It can be tedious for some people. Other people, it's like, it's literally like making their coffee in the morning. It doesn't matter. Like it's just a process they enjoy or they don't mind. I rip all my own discs, but I'm more into like the tech side of things. That's why I spend 8 to 9 hours doing manual calibrations.
Yeah.
It's like
Right.
that's a walk in the park, like ripping a disc compared to doing something like that. So I also like making my own demo files where I like will use like MKV toolniks and like basically set the in and out points of where I want it to start and just create those little clips and put them on my Plex server and play those back. So I'm not having to grab discs. Wow. Grab discs every time I, Freudian slip there. But I'm not having to grab the disc every time I want to demo a scene when I'm testing out subs or speakers or whatever. So it can be very convenient. And then to go back, Justin, I did see your comment, and I know what you're talking about. He says, I know the new room tour upgrades video is coming, but the wait is killing me. I didn't see your other, I don't know if you posted before, but I'm pretty sure you're talking about the updated tutorials. They are coming. The whole point of me doing the room update is to make those tutorials so much easier to shoot, because having the limited space I did before. Yeah. So, yeah, it just, I kept hitting roadblock after roadblock with that. Do you remember like the first couple of things we did? Like most people were asking about those. Like, when are they coming? When are they coming? The whole stream was just people like, when's a new tutorial? I'm like, it's coming, I promise. I have not forgotten about you guys. Thank you. Thank you for your support and like sticking around.
This is episode 7, and we took last week off, so it's been 2 months since we started this podcast.
That's crazy.
So
it's crazy.
Time flies.
That Hertz does mention though. And while Technodad does mention that they call a Kaleidoscape a luxury product that does not have Dolby Vision to me is like, huh? Like you're paying so much money that I feel like that, and I don't know if they just don't want to pay the Dolby license fee, if there's some other like reason for that, but to me it's kind of like spending, and I know I might get shit for this from some people, but it's like I every time I see someone recommend a Samsung display to me, I'm like, well, it doesn't have Dolby Vision. And if I'm paying a certain amount of money, I want that as an option. Come on, Samsung. Like, you could make so much more money if you just add that. Yeah. Just do it. Like, it's like, there's no reason to leave out features at that price point anymore, right? Like, just give me everything. That's what I want. Yeah. And for some people, that's not going to be that's not going to matter. For me, it does. So I'm one of those people.
I mean, even go back to the Marantz AV10, the fact that you still have to buy that extra $200 direct live license is a joke. If you're spending $7,000, give me all the direct live, direct bass control, multi bass control, all of it. Because I'm spending $7,000 on your product. You better give me all of the versions of direct free.
Yeah.
So it's
for real.
It's pretty dumb.
And Technodad does mention that most projectors don't have DV support, which a Kaleidoscape system predominantly is going to go into a system that has projection. And like he said, most projectors don't have DV support. And he also he's totally on the page of it's not worth it for the majority of people. And I think that even Kaleidoscape knows that. They're not from
Yeah.
like I actually had someone or someone from Kaleidoscape reach out to me and say,
Mhm.
"Would you like to make a video on this?" And I was like, "I don't really think this is what my channel is about right now. Like, I'm more of a budget, like, friendly DIY thing. And it's like when your system costs this much money, I just don't think that it's a good fit right now." Um, so nothing. Again, the people that I've met from Kaleidoscape have been super cool. Um,
Sure.
they tried to hire me, so uh, for doing their quality control monitoring or something, but I didn't want to move to California. So deal
Wait,
with it.
they really did?
They kind of talked to me about it a little bit when I went to the first CDA, but I didn't really pursue it because it was just like we just bought our house. I'm like the pet. Yeah, I don't want to get into it right now. You and I can talk about it privately. Um, but yeah, so going back to like the whole diminishing returns thing. So we talked about speakers, AVRs, displays and projectors are another major. It can be a money pit for sure. Once you
Yeah.
start getting into like the higher end JVCs,
I mean, it seems like every year, like the biggest feature or
yeah,
quality upgrade with TVs in particular is brightness. I
right,
mean, how I particularly don't like, especially like with my phone, the brightness, I don't know if you can see this. The brightness is set to like a third of the way up.
yeah.
This right here.
Do you have
Because
a do you have night mode on too?
I do, yeah.
I could tell.
It looks yellow, huh?
Yeah, it's got jaundice.
Yep.
Your phone has jaundice.
Yep. This is my jaundice iPhone.
Yes.
Um, but I mean, yeah, it's like I don't particularly like overly bright things. It just
Yeah.
it wears down my eyes quicker than I would like. So if TVs are just trying to get brighter and brighter and brighter, I don't know if that's the direction I want them to be
Well,
heading.
I think I think once we like so there's a whole like kind of like the brightness war. We'll call it brightness wars or whatever,
Yeah,
right?
right.
TVs I was like, I want to get brighter. So there's two sides to that though. There are applications where like you're putting a display in a bright room where you need extra brightness to like combat that, right? Like you can't expect to like if you're like let's say you're like got to pay a professional to calibrate it and they're like this is what the studio environment's like. I'm going to calibrate to 100 nits for standard dynamic range. Guess what? It's going to be super dim in a bright room. Heck, even in a dark room, if you're not used to it, it's going to look dim.
Mhm.
But if you like say have a super bright room and you're like you have this extra overhead to calibrate to say 300 nits, well now like you're going to be able to see way more of the picture and it's still going to be accurate to the source except you're boosting the brightness because you're trying to combat the room. You're not going for a reference viewing environment here. You're trying to say, hey, this is where I view the movie sometimes, and that's why you
Mhm.
might have a day and a night mode on the TV.
Yeah.
But the other side of that is the more brightness for HDR is especially like on an OLED is a good thing. But we will reach a point like I always say like I want to stop at the point where we start to need sunglasses when we watch a movie, right?
Right.
Like the HDR, like for stuff like little particles or maybe the glint off of a sword or something. That's fine. But I
Sure.
like when I'm driving around, like I always hear the argument of like, well, the like if you go outside on a sunny day, it's like over 10,000 nits or something like that, and I'm like, yeah, and I wear sunglasses, and I don't want that experience when I watch a movie, right? But I don't know that we'll actually get to that point. I think
Yeah.
the way content is mastered anyway, in HDR and Dolby Vision, I think that we're like even when we reach these 10,000 nit uh, displays eventually, they're predominantly going to be used for those peak highlights, and they're really not going to be taking up much of the screen. Although, if filmmakers start using fade to white screens that are like 100% values, I'm gonna kill him. Like,
Hmm.
it's like it's only so many lens flares I can handle. J.J. Abrams at 10,000 nits. Okay, I can't take
Right.
it. So yeah, that's the only thing I will say. And you'll notice that too. Like, I don't know what phone you have, but like if it supports like HDR on YouTube, you can watch HDR videos, and you'll see the display kind of change. Like suddenly, like the whites in the comment section, if you don't have it in dark mode, or like the white bars and stuff are kind of dimmed down, but like the actual like content is like it looks
Yeah.
different. Like it's more punchy. It's like it has that
Mhm.
HDR look to it. Um, excuse me. Yeah, I think like more brightness for HDR is a good thing, but they're like having like like a crazy amount of brightness for like SDR content just to like have it pumped up is like crazy to me. Like you really like anything over like 1,000 nits there, even then, like unless you have the display like out in the sun, and we're talking like you go to like a drive-through and like they have the displays. Those might need to be pumped up because they're
Sure.
under the sun and they're a business, but you're not.
Yeah.
Can't imagine watching content like that.
No.
Yikes. Yikes.
Or watching content with the same settings as you see when you walk into Costco or Best Buy.
I want all my
It's
grass to look like a nuclear fallout type of thing. It's like
yeah.
bright greenish, like
Uh,
yellow, and yeah.
Contrast is boosted. Everything is just
Oh,
211.
yeah. And they do that
Look
to
at
sell the.
me.
Yeah, they sell you the TV, and then you get it home, and you're like, "Brrr,"
Yeah.
it's like when you, oh god, it's like you you end up falling asleep like this. The next day you go to work, and you're like Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and it's like half side of your face is all sunburnt.
Oh, went to the
Shaping
beach, huh?
mountains out of mashed potatoes. Um, but yeah,
Okay, so here's a question.
sure, I might have an answer.
Uh, how could you possibly justify the price of a an altitude 16 from Trinoff?
I thought you were gonna only ask me easy questions tonight, Ealan. We talked about this before. How could I justify the price? Because what
It's like
the out?
18 grand or
Yeah.
something.
The short answer, I couldn't. I like currently I couldn't. Like I don't have a room capable. One, you need a bigger room, really, if you're trying to fill that room with 16 speakers. You're not gonna put it in a
Yeah,
11 by 12 room, right?
yeah.
Um,
I mean, that's my ultimate goal is to have a 9.4.6. That's
yeah.
like my personal end game configuration.
So you
Just
want
because just
the
because my
nine?
my
Yeah.
my end game is also going to have a projector screen.
Okay.
So I'm going to have the front center, front
Are you
left
doing
center, the
front
LCR.
wides? You do front
Yeah,
wides for the okay.
yes, because I want to have my LCR behind the screen. So
So you okay.
I want the front wides to fill in the gap between the screen and the surrounds, right? So that's why I want 9 ear level speakers, and I want 6 heights because that's the most immersive you can possibly get, having speakers above you and in front of you and behind you.
Yes.
So, um, but I can achieve that with the Marantz AV10 or the what is
How
it?
big?
The Anthem AVM 90 or whatever, you know.
Yeah. How big
And
is your
those are,
room?
6 grand, 7 grand.
Yeah.
It's 13, no, it's 16 feet long and 11 feet wide.
Okay.
But
Okay. Yeah.
I'm
That
not
makes
talking
sense. Yeah.
about that current theater.
Oh. Okay.
Just
Okay.
because my brother-in-law is probably going to sell this place or rent it out within maybe a year or so.
What? I'll buy it
So I'm
for
going
you.
to have to move my theater to our property.
Yeah.
But my ultimate end game theater is 9.4.6, which I can achieve with the Marantz AV10 or an Anthem AVM 90. But I mean, I guess, but the thing is, a 9.4.6 configuration can easily be attained with an AV10. The thing about the Trinoff is that it can handle up to 16 channels, but you literally don't have there's nothing assigned to a specific speaker terminal. Everything is just just free
Yeah. You
free
can
ride,
put the
free range.
speaker there and basically
Yeah,
assign it to the yeah.
There's nothing that says this has to be front left, center, front right.
Right.
It's just here's 16 outputs. Do what you want with them.
Yeah.
So that's cool. I really like that aspect, how it's completely customizable to however you want.
I mean, for the price, it definitely should be, right? Like it's,
Right.
that kind of par for the course there. Yeah.
Yeah. And their room correction, which obviously is built in to the preamp itself, their room correction is like Dirac Live on steroids, pretty much.
Yeah.
So it's basically taking, again, charging a premium for convenience. It is taking something ultra premium, but allowing almost anybody to achieve an incredible sounding system. Because it just has these crazy algorithms going on and calculations happening to where a general consumer, although I think you can actually like hire somebody or like have an actual Trinoff technician come out to your place
Yeah.
if you really want to and have them calibrate it, which is insane.
Yeah.
So that's kind of built into the price, I guess. But even with that being said, with all those bells and whistles and with the convenience factor and room correction that is leagues ahead of Dirac Live, supposedly, I'm thinking $10,000 max, right?
Yeah.
Considering that the AV10 and the Anthem AVM 90 are $6,000, $7,000. So I can justify having a Trinoff level, whatever, being around 10 grand. That to me sounds like a price that I could potentially get behind if and when I ever think that I can afford something like that.
Yeah.
But 18 grand? No, man.
Yeah. That's hard.
No.
That's hard.
When it gets to like buying a car or choosing a
Right.
preamp, that's where I'm going to tap out. But if it's 10 grand or less, if push comes to shove, I might be able to swing that if we win the lottery or or I saved up for many, many years and finally I can afford a Trinoff if it was $10,000.
Yeah.
But 18, I don't think I'll ever be able to justify that.
You get this cool microphone though. Like this is like Michael had mentioned, have you seen the microphone? And yeah, it's super cool.
It is. It really is.
What like looking at it's like their calibration also looks at like the time domain. I don't know if it does what ARC does, where it like phase aligns, or Dirac also does that. It will actually I know Dirac will like actually change the impulse response of certain speakers, I believe.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know if it does that, but I would hope that this kind of would do everything like under the sun, right?
Yeah.
Because like for that amount of money, but yeah, you can. I do know you can pay someone to bring to come in and calibrate your system for you with this.
Yeah. If Trinoff offered their preamp and their amps and like Trinoff manufactured speakers, if they had their own speaker line, so if you got preamp, amps, and speakers for $18,000, then I think that would be valuable. That would probably be worth the price of admission. But just a preamp being 18 grand? No way, man. No way.
Yeah. They do correct for phase. I just looked at. I literally scrolled
they
down
do.
one more, and it was like phase correction. I'm like,
Ding.
before and after, yeah. And this is stuff that it can also be done, obviously, manually, most of the time.
Yeah.
But it requires a lot more work on your part most of the time.
Yes.
Honestly, or you could hire someone that would potentially be able to do that for you. But again, you're going to pay for it. So,
yeah, either way.
Again, diminishing returns, right? I think that most people don't consider hiring a professional calibrator, which is their prerogative, right? Like it doesn't, like for me, it's kind of like I may get my display professionally calibrated at some point this year because I know a guy like who works for ISF, like Jason Dustle. He's local to Florida. And so we've been talking about like maybe doing a video or something or a series of videos. So I might get a calibration out of it. I don't know. I'm not saying I will, but to me, that's important. I like getting the most out of your display. I've calibrated it myself, but like I don't have a $15,000 like Spectra radiometer, that he has. Like I don't have these tools that, UMic 1 is fantastic. It is a cheap like measurement microphone that allows you to kind of dial everything in the best that you can. But there does exist higher quality things out there of like from professional audio calibrators. Again, diminishing returns. Are you gonna get more money or like more enjoyment or more performance out of paying someone like I don't know what professional calibrators charge, but let's say $2,000 if you're calibrating a massive system.
Yeah.
I don't know, but that guy's time and knowledge and experience in the field is also worth something. It's like you're not having to do it. That's the other side to that.
Yeah.
So, if you want the best, you kind of have to decide: do I want to try to get this myself and do all this myself? DIY the DIY route, or do I want to pay someone to do it? Sorry, that went like a little off topic there, but it kind of does fall into like how I kind of view the hobby in that like I'm more of a hands-on kind of guy. I want to learn how to do this so this professional guy doesn't have to come back and I could just do it myself. Even if it might take me 10 hours in a day, I'll do it knowing that it was done right and I'll get the enjoyment out of doing it. Not everybody has that time or really the drive to want to do that,
Yeah.
And so I'm different than other people, which is fine. And I find value in doing that. But I also do find value and respect the people that do it for a living, And if I'm ever in a position where I need to pay someone, I know like, you got to get the right guy, the good guy or the woman, whoever. And I'm more than happy to pay them for their services, knowing that I'm getting the best out of my system. If I didn't have the time to do that, I would probably still want to be there to kind of ask questions and be like, hey, like, I've done this before. Is it kind of like this? Or are you doing blah, 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 but not so much where I'm like in their way. It's kind of like, when the AC guys come to service your AC, you're like, well, I did this and this, and you just hang around and tell them everything you did. You're like, okay, now you're being a helicopter customer. Go away, let them do their thing.
Yeah.
Ask questions at the end if you have questions. But yeah, so I guess you've asked all the questions so far. I thought I had one for you, but I don't.
Well,
what's life? What's
so
it mean?
let's see. So can we? Well, if we bring Storm Audio and Trenoff into the picture, so can we end this topic by saying maybe the AVM 90 from Anthem with their Arc Genesis and the AV10 from Marantz. Is that the apex of the bell curve? Is
I
that
think,
the
yeah, I think someone said it in here. It was way earlier on, but it's like, it's kind of a sliding curve depending on what
right?
you're looking at. So, like, if someone's looking at a Trinov or Storm, then yeah, like these other things, like what you mentioned, the AVM 90 and stuff, might actually be affordable by comparison to those,
Mhm.
right? Like when you slide that curve, it's like if we're, but also the curve goes down too. So like if you're looking at like a $1,800 receiver, and then you go, okay, well, could I get like a, $1,000 receiver that will do the same thing? Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like it's hard.
Yeah.
That's a hard. Normally when you start sliding that curve down, the features that you may be looking at on those higher end devices start dropping too. Like you're no longer getting the channel count you want. You're no longer getting this. You're no longer getting that. So
Yeah.
customization, blah blah blah. You might even like, some people don't want to. They don't like the visual aspect of something. So automatically they're going to go to the higher one because you know those offer a certain visual aesthetic, right?
Yeah.
Some people love the way Marantz products look.
Mhm.
I'm indifferent. Like, I don't really care.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
like, I kind of personally don't like the little circular like thing on the front.
Right. Right. That's a
Doesn't
staple of
really.
theirs. Yeah.
It is. It is. And some people like that. I honestly, I'm not a big fan, but at the end of the day, I don't really care because
Right.
I turn my front display off when I'm watching a movie
Yeah. Just so it's not in your
or
face
whatever.
and
Yeah.
bright. Yeah.
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 So, yeah, I think if you're looking at those Storm Audio Trinov products already, then your bell curve is already way up here, right?
Yeah.
Like you're not in the same percentile as like someone who is kind of more in the mid range.
Mhm.
I was gonna stop at mid, be one of the cool kids. So mid, bro. No, you're not. You're like way like above that. I don't like the term end game product because I feel
Mhm.
like there's always going to be some new end game product out. There's gonna be a new end game receiver. There's gonna be new end game speakers. It's like it's just like a buzzword. I don't really.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Just
I
give
don't
it
care.
time and something else will.
Something else will be. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think when we start putting monetary values on things, right? It it is. We tend to see the value when someone says that thing costs $1 million. Whoa, what? That's crazy. I don't like that either, really, because it's like, what does $1 million get you?
Yeah.
When someone says it's $1 million theater, well, honestly, most of that money went into the construction of the room. If it's, that's
Uh-huh.
it. Like,
Right.
so it's like how much. I mean, I've seen $1 million home theaters that literally have a $10,000 projector.
Wow.
To me, there's a balance there that was not met, you know.
Right.
So the thing
Yeah.
is, a lot of the theaters I've seen like that, it's normally through an integrator. Nothing against
Mhm.
integrators whatsoever, but their job is to sell a system, and they do a good job of that. But I've met a lot of people through this, and they have a passion for the hobby, but they're not they're not I'm trying to figure out how to say this without coming. I think you guys know what I'm saying, but like me, I'm like in there like hooking stuff up myself and saying most of these guys aren't doing that. And so
Yeah.
like I have a friend actually. I can talk about this personally because like he's a good friend of mine, but like he's never like really he all of his home theater stuff is custom through like an integrator, and so he's
Mm.
never hooked up most of his components himself,
Yeah.
unless it's like, oh, I bought a new PC or I did this and like I put it in the rack or whatever. Okay, but like I went to try to help him with the mini DSP, and he didn't know where things needed to be hooked up because he wasn't familiar with the wiring.
Right.
So there, there's many different levels, and there's no like right or wrong here. It's just like, I'm one of those people that like, I want to know every component. I want to know what gets hooked up to what, and I want to, I'm that kind of guy. Not everybody's like that. So,
Yeah.
um, it's yeah, I don't know. I don't know where I was kind of going with that point, but I lost it somewhere in the middle. Um, but yeah, I guess my point is that, not everyone is going to be on the same level. I just hid myself. I hid that whole screen there. Didn't mean to do that. Um, yeah, not everyone is in the same level of like enthusiast, right? Like I'm an
Sure.
enthusiast, but there are people that want like an amazing theater, but they don't really, maybe they don't have the time, or they just don't really want to spend the time learning about it, to do it all themselves, or to have more of a hand in it. And that's okay. Like there's nothing wrong with that. It does kind of like, is I guess someone who can't afford everything that they want, it kind of like, I look at it and I'm like, man, I like, he doesn't even like, this person doesn't even know what this thing is called. It's like, damn. It's kind of, it's a little like, I don't want to say disappointing, but it's kind of like, okay, like, I could see where this person's like priorities lie, right? Like they're more into like
Sure.
the aesthetics or something. And again, I'm not really saying anything negative here. I'm in a different part of the, kind of like, my brain is kind of a different part of the hobby with like OCD and stuff, that I want to know
Hmm.
every like little intricate detail. And then other people are just like, I just want to turn the damn thing on and enjoy a movie.
Yeah.
And I think both of those completely valid, right?
Hmm.
So
Yeah. I personally think, I mean, going back again to Trinoff versus, Marantz AV10 or whatever. If you have a dedicated home theater space, like in its own room or whatever, um, I personally think if you have one couch or just one little plane of where you're going to be sitting and where your main listening position will be, I think the biggest that you will ever need to go is 9.x.6.
yeah,
Because like I said, if you've got a projector, your LCR is behind the screen, your front wides cover the distance between the screen and the surrounds. You've got your surrounds, surround backs, 6 heights. It just makes sense.
yeah,
But the fact that the the Altitude 16, for example, the fact that it only supports 16 channels, kind of, I don't like that. I would assume anything that is going to cost $18,000 is going to be more geared towards people with multiple rows of seats, because in that instance, you're probably going to want 2 sets of side surrounds so that each row is basically getting their own, copy of the
right.
side surround information, which you can assign in a Trinoff. You can't really do that with, Marantz or anything. It's not as customizable that way.
So yeah, just to speak on that real quick though,
Yeah.
this a friend of mine, the same friend that I was talking about earlier, um, there does exist outside technologies. We'll say that extra, like think of like a mini DSP that goes in between your speakers and subwoofers, right?
Hmm.
You literally have one output, and then you could multiply that output by 4. You could assign, you know, delays to that or whatever. So he has the AVM 90. It's the same guy that I bought my 6300H from, or AVM 70. I'm sorry. He upgraded to the AVM 70, but he had always wanted dual, like extra, like basically another pair of side surround speakers because of his rows of seating. Like there was kind of a void, right?
Hmm.
And so to do that, he needed to add something called the Ashley Proteas, which are basically like mini DS. Think of like mini DSPs for your speakers.
Hmm.
Now, these were actually recommended to him by Anthony Gramani. They're not cheap. They use
Yeah.
something called Phoenix connectors.
Right.
So, but basically, he was able to add those. And the whole point was he was going to have Anthony Gramani come out and do a full system calibration.
Whoa.
Yeah. Which he told me how much that he wanted. I don't know. I was like, that's crazy.
Well, I
But
mean, it's Anthony Gramani. So.
yeah. But what's cool is I'd actually got the opportunity to kind of, we were talking on the phone one day, and he's like, well, why don't you just like remote into my system, like through TeamViewer or whatever, and like you can check out the Proteas. And I was like, dude, I would have a field day calibrating this system. Like it would be like if I had this functionality here, it would just make the whole process so simple. Like you had every control you could think of right there. You wouldn't even need if you had your subwoofers hooked up to these, you wouldn't need a mini DSP or anything like that. Like everything is built in. But what was cool was he could take the like basically the pre-outs from his receiver into the input, and then he could assign, like you were talking about with the Trinov, he could assign that to any one of the outputs on the other side. So
Yeah.
in the case of like the side surrounds, he was able to take that input and say, okay, go to this speaker and then this speaker and then this. So he was able to have those side surrounds kind of doubled on the second row
Yeah.
really easily just by a couple of button presses.
Right.
And I was like, that's super cool. So he was able to change on the fly where he wanted things routed, which I mean is a huge benefit. But then it also had like, I can't remember how many bands of parametric EQ it had on each channel. But yeah, having something like REW and just being able to create those filters like that, doing like, you could average the whole listening area or whatever. I was like, dude. Then I looked at how much he spent for those, and I was like, it's like a third of the price of my home theater. Like, I'm good. I'm good.
Yeah.
But it gave me ideas for the future of like, making it easier and more accessible for doing stuff like that. So, Kevin actually had a cool comment here. Says, Brad, writing a check for a home theater to a rich guy is just bling. DIY home theater $1 at a time is passion for the hobby. Glad you're passionate. Yeah, I think I'm definitely passionate, and sometimes that gets in the way of enjoying stuff. You see, and I think I never try to be judgmental of someone else, because I'm not about that. I'm about like there's multiple tiers to this hobby. And like my way of doing something isn't maybe necessarily the right way for somebody else, and that's okay. But it can be sometimes discouraging when you see a really nice theater and the person just has it because they have money, and thankfully I've never actually I haven't experienced that particular thing in the home theaters I've toured with Michael. Thankfully, they've all been really passionate. Charlie, the guy in Louisiana that has a Star Wars theater, he knew everything that he had, and he had his own. He had retired from his own production company. He did movies and commercials. So we talked a lot about cameras and lighting and stuff because I'm a film nerd and I went to film school and all that stuff. And so we connected that way. And it was cool to see like him have the same kind of passions that I do. And the same type of hobbies and stuff. But I still realize I'm like way more into this than even though he's really into it. I'm like on another, like I've gone down the rabbit hole, man. I followed Alice down the rabbit. Like I'm gone. Like I can't, there's no coming out like from that for this guy here. But and the one guy in Cape Coral, Mike, he built all the speakers himself.
Wow.
Himself. I mean, he obviously got like the boxes and stuff, but like he made them. He made the subwoofers, and he did all. I think he did all the wiring because he's like he was like a electrical engineer or something.
Oh dang!
So like he like had his hand like, and to me, I was like, that would be me. Like I would want my hands and You know, it's like I want to put all the components in the rack. I want to do all the wire management. He did all the wire management too. He's like, yeah, it took me 2 days to do
Oh
all,
my
and
God.
it was like one of the cleanest wire management jobs I've ever seen. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh man, that's super, super awesome. So to see guys like that, you know, I'm sure, you know, like I said, all the people that I've met through Michael and seen those tours have not followed that trend of like, well, they just have money. You know, they're all
Mhm.
passionate about it. Some more than others, and that's to be expected. I mean, you know, this is
Sure.
a vast hobby. Um, so yeah, it was a super cool, super cool.
Well, that's good.
Yes.
Yeah. Because I'm sure, 30 seconds after meeting somebody who isn't passionate about it and they just threw money at somebody to make a really good home theater,
Yeah.
it'd probably be a boring conversation.
Yeah. No, for
You know,
sure.
just
Yeah.
like, look what
Look at
other
all the.
people did, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. He did. He helped. Charlie helped design that Star Wars theater too. Like he
Oh, cool.
that. Yeah, and his son like helped him design it as well, which was super cool. So
Yeah.
super nice. So I guess we're at about 2 hours, our normal time here. If anybody
Correct.
has any questions, I think we're gonna be wrapping up here. I see one from Stephen McNeely, but if you do have a question, if you wouldn't mind just putting a GQ right there, ask away.
JQ, JQ.
JQ, we'll try to get to your questions with answers. So, um, yeah, but yeah, so Stephen actually asked anyone, could be you, me, or anyone in the comments.
Anyone?
I'm adding mounted overhead speakers to my single seat home theater. Should the overheads be on access to my seating position? Um,
As in just two? Like two overheads? Like, yeah. Because if it's just two you're
Ooh,
dealing with,
sorry.
like just two height channels, then yes, you want them in line with your
Six
six.
channels, so six overheads. Um,
Well, I mean, yeah, or at least the middle ones obviously should be straight above you. But
there's
then,
a
yeah, go ahead.
yeah. Well, I was gonna say there's a few videos by a friend of mine, Stephen Smith with Home Theater Gurus. Um, he's got some awesome Atmos setup guides about figuring out the angles and the positioning of your Atmos speakers. Um, I'll say this right now. He made some recommendations to me that I was reluctant to do because I didn't want to reposition my height channels when I first did I first did my theater. And one thing I will say, do not put them in line with the mains. Put them like closer to that's a very popular thing if you follow the Dolby guide. I wouldn't recommend doing the in line with mains thing. You're gonna get a lot of smearing with the bed layer that way. Um,
Yeah.
but
I don't
like
know though, because I've definitely heard. I mean, like RO 3D specifications.
right,
They
and so
they want it.
it's a
They want it
compromise, right? Yeah,
basically mirroring your bed layer.
right. So if you
You're mirroring it up top too.
yeah, so if you're going for a Oro 3D, then you probably want to do that. I would say I think it's really up to you. What I can say is just from personal experience, putting like 4 Dolby Atmos speakers in line with the mains um, creates that smearing. And I've never heard like I always thought like Atmos was just okay
Mhm.
before, and then when I moved them slightly in, not exactly centered between like the center and the fronts,
Yeah.
right? But like more inward, like instead of I can't remember the actual degrees. I wish I could, but more kind of more inward where they're they're not right in the middle, but they're kind of more on the outside. They're like, if you go on like 6 inches from like the um
Yeah.
no, your broadcast will not end. It does that every time it hits 2 hours. It tries to end it for us. I saw
Freaked me
Ealan
out.
freak out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Joel does mention that it's the Atmos placement seems to be a topic that varies among YouTubers. Definitely.
Yeah.
It also depends on how close your wall is, which is true. Very
Correct.
true. I will say that for me, I have a smaller room. So take what I'm about to say with a grain of salt. Actually, take everything I say with a grain of salt because I'm just going off my personal experience and what I found works the best. I ended up talking to Stephen Smith. He kind of designed a little thing for me and sent me, you know, kind of where the placement is. And essentially, it was fairly simple. And if they have aimable tweeters, preferably aimable drivers, you want to aim those at like for you, since it's a single position, aim them at like the opposite armrest or like part of the headrest. So like if it's the top front right, you want to aim it at like the like your left over here, so you get nice coverage, right? But honestly, for you, it probably doesn't really matter since it's single. You could probably just aim them at your ears, like wherever your head rests. Just aim them there.
Yeah.
So like the angles are extremely important. And if I will say this, if you have your surrounds super high already, if you can move them down, that's going to make a massive difference for your soundstage. For the
Yeah.
separation between, because you want that separation. I noticed like when I first set up the back surrounds, and they were super high, like I was telling you, Ealan, there was a lot of smearing with the heights back there. I couldn't tell the
Yeah.
difference between like what's down here, and I was doing that to kind of like combat the back of the theater seats.
Mm-hmm.
But I brought them down because I don't remember how high they were. They were super high, too high. But I brought them down to just where they clear the back of the seats, and it's such a massive difference in terms of the
Yeah.
separation that you get more of that kind of bubble of sound.
I mean, you'll notice if you ever see a post-production facility that mixes Atmos, all their height speakers are pointing directly at the listening position.
Yep, they're all angled
Yeah.
Yep.
So
Yep.
that's probably best. But I mean, I get it. If it's like, if you got like a really long couch, you can't necessarily do that, or else all the height information is going to the very center of the couch.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then people sitting on the side probably won't get that great of an experience. But
Yeah. And honestly, like my experience was with having them like in line with the mains, firing straight down, not angled or anything. I was just like, oh, okay. There's like a little ambience or whatever. It was when I talked to Stephen Smith, it's like my whole system came alive. Like I never noticed the Atmos. Like, yeah, I don't want to say notice, because like if you notice them all the time, then they're set up wrong. Like you shouldn't notice them all the time. But yeah, it was kind of transformative, and I haven't looked back. And I'm sure that there's many different methods to setting these up, right?
yeah.
I found what works for me in my small room. I'm never going to put 6 in my room because it would probably sound worse, honestly.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Because it's such a small room. 4 is like we're maxing out the capabilities of that room. I have like it's funny. It's like I moved in with like 5.4.2, and now I have 7.4.4, and it's like I think I'm good for where I'm at.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
All
Oh
right.
yes, for sure. I did. Real quick, sorry. Spatial calibration toolkit is awesome. I will agree with that. I love that thing, and it's nice hearing Chana in your room.
Can you hear me moving
Around your room.
around your room?
Here I am, still moving. Yeah, no, that's a great. Yeah, it's a great setup thing, especially if you can actually use that to measure your Atmos channels with REW.
Uh-huh.
So Yeah, maybe look for a video on how to do that if you want.
Ba-dum-bum-bum-bum.
There are also free patterns out there that you could download from like obsessive compulsive audiophile if you like for measuring your Atmos. Like if you didn't want to go that route, I'm just trying to let everyone know.
Yeah.
Heights, Michael. I think we're talking about height speakers. We're talking about specifically like height speakers in like a Dolby Atmos or DTSX config.
Yeah.
Oro 3D. Although we'll see if Oro 3D actually is going to be around for the next 5 years or not. Who knows? Who knows? You think Joe and Tell would like really get really pissed off if it just dies?
He would still do it though in his own way.
Oh. Yeah, he would find a way.
Yeah.
His magic beans always find a way into your heart.
Yes.
I think that's a slogan. I might have to talk to him about that slogan. Anyway, trademark. Home theater gamer and Ealan Osborne in a world. Okay. Anyway, well, I think that's going to wrap up tonight's broadcast slash podcast. Ealan, do you want to close with anything? Do you have any final thoughts or?
Not really. Just make the most with what you have.
That's it.
Whether that be and honestly, like Brad was saying, your next purchase probably needs to be something to treat your room, whether that be acoustic panels or something. So
you can make them for fairly cheap, and you can get some cheap wood. And
yeah,
I should know. I made them.
Yes,
I made them. Yes, you did. You went all out.
Yeah,
you have them so they can move. Yeah.
Can move them around if I need to.
Awesome.
All right.
Awesome.
What about you? Any last words?
Oh, whoa. No, actually, I think that, if you're thinking about buying something new, like Ealan said, look at acoustic panels if you've never, if you don't have any room treatment, that will better your sound probably more than any speakers will be able to in your current environment most of the time. Also, don't be afraid to like mess around with like Odyssey and stuff. Follow some of these tutorials that are out there, not just mine, but like obsessive compulsive audiophile. Try Odyssey 1. I mean, if you already have the file, like give it a shot, man. Like you really don't have anything to lose other than maybe 5 minutes of your time. I would like to thank Michael for the super chat. Thank you so much. Hands doing the sign of the horns with sparkles around. I'm very, I don't know. Sparkles. Yeah. Metallica.
Right.
Metal up your ass. Anyway, so yeah, dude, like mess around with that stuff, man. And,
yeah, if anything from this week's live stream, go check out Odyssey 1. See what it's all about.
Yes. Obsessive compulsive audiophile. The guy's name, I don't know. I think it's Sirkan or something. If you listen to enough of his stuff, I guarantee you will be going to bed hearing his voice in your head. So there you go.
Yay.
But with that, I will bid you adieu, to quote Larry David. Curb your enthusiasm. And we will catch you next week.
Yay. Missed you guys last week.
Yeah.
Glad we're back.
Take care, guys. We'll catch you next time.
Bye.